Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, October 27th edition of the MMAOB Daily Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin, and I'm joined by my co-host, as always, Mr. Cole Shelton on this Tuesday morning in Toronto. Cole, how's it going, man?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I'm good, Cole. I mean, it's been a busy week. Obviously, we had a lot going on the weekend. I feel like so many storylines kind of got pushed to the side just because of Khabib and his retirement stuff. We'll obviously talk about that today. But there was a lot of other stuff that happened on that card, UFC 254. And of course, we have another card this weekend, UFC Vegas 12, Anderson Silva's final fight against Uriah Hall. So we have a lot to talk about today. I will not be doing Bellator with Cole today. I'll do that Thursday morning. We don't have odds for it yet. We only have one odd for odds for the main event. I'm still waiting for the odds.
Too. I'm
it's stacked. And I was on James Lynch's show, and I want to plug that on Line Movement yesterday. We talked a little bit about that card, Cole. It's really deep, actually. There's a lot of really good prospects, also just veterans on the prelims. So that card's flying under the radar. Hopefully the odds makers drop the odds for it soon. I really hate how Bellator comes on Thursday, Cole. I'd love for it to come out a little bit earlier in the week just so we can get, a couple extra days to cap the fights, but it is what it is. Anyways, we have a big show for you guys today. Like I said, we're going to start with UFC 254. We'll move our way to UFC Vegas. And then, of course, we'll take your comments throughout the show. We'll also talk about some news and fight announcements as well. So let's just start with UFC 254, Cole. And we'll start with it right away. Khabib Nurmagomedov defeats Justin Gaethje via second-round triangle choke. It was an armbar, and apparently he turned into a triangle because he didn't want to break Gaethje's arm in front of his family. So, that's just incredible. That story came out yesterday. This was, in my opinion, the best he's ever looked. I personally was really shocked he retired, Cole. I'll be honest, man. My jaw dropped when he retired. I just didn't see it happening. I didn't see Cejudo's happening either. There's a few guys like DC that obviously we all saw happening, but some of these guys like Cejudo and Khabib retiring in their primes at age 32. It's very surprising to me. Having said that, obviously his rationale for why he retired makes a lot of sense with his father passing away, just not wanting to carry on without him in his corner, promising his mother he would retire. Now, in the wake of the retirement call, obviously everyone's asking, everyone's in a rush to anoint the GOAT and the pound for pound great. I'm not in a rush personally, and to me it was a great win, but I'm still not convinced he's the number one greatest fighter of all time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Cole, but again, I think we're all kind of rushing to make this announcement. We have to wait a bit,
Yeah, I still think there's two people in Jon Jones and George St. Pierre just to cut above the rest. I still think those two are my 1 and 2. What order? I still have a hard time. Some days I think, oh, Jones is, and then some days I go, oh no, GSP is, just because Jones is PED history. Maybe that tarnishes a bit, but I still think those two are the best. Jones put out a video. He's like, this guy has 4 world titles. I have 15. That's a big difference. Khabib was 29-0, 13-0, or 12-0 in the UFC. I forget the exact number. I think it was 13, but only 4 title wins, and the first one was against Ally Quinta, the 10th ranked guy at the time. You can't really put much into that. His last 3 wins are phenomenal. McGregor, Poirier, Gaethje. Those are 3 of the best lightweights, but if not the 3 best lightweights the UFC has on the roster besides Khabib. So those great wins. I just don't think the longevity was there as a champion to be that GOAT, to be in that GOAT talk.
Yeah, I agree with Cole here on this one as well. And also, we should mention, he did have a win over Rafael dos Anjos before dos Anjos was champion. He got hurt. Khabib missed a couple years due to injuries, also because the Tony Ferguson fight kept falling through. So you got to cut him a little bit of slack, Cole, because I think he could have fought a few more times. He was ready to fight a few more times. But in general, I do agree with you, Cole, in that Jon Jones, Anderson Silva, too, and GSP, they all made way more title defense, had more championship 5-round fights. I love what Khabib did in his last few fights. The run he went on the last 3 fights, submitting Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, and most recently Justin Gaethje, that might be the best 3-run fight in UFC history, especially in the lightweight division. But I'm not convinced yet that what he's done with the 13-0 record has surpassed what Jon Jones did. I think Jones is 17-1 or something with the no contest with DC. The problem with Jones, obviously, it's the stuff outside the cage, Cole. It's not the inside the cage stuff. If he didn't test positive, if he didn't hit that woman, the pregnant lady, and break her arm and run away, if he didn't have the drunken escapades, Cole, and the cocaine, all that stuff, I think the court of public opinion's kind of weighed in on this one. And we were talking last night, Cole, and you were like, no one even talks about McGregor anymore. We used to talk about him as Mick Goat. That was his nickname, Cole, Mick Goat. And people were like, okay, he's the greatest ever. No one talks about Conor anymore, Cole. And, the losses, obviously, Khabib and Nate Diaz hurt his legacy, but I think it's a lot of it to do because of the stuff outside the cage. And then you look at a guy like Khabib and GSP, these guys are model citizens. These guys, man, they don't even jaywalk, Cole. These guys are amazing people. And I think that's why they're a little bit of a cut above to most people. I've been thinking about that lately, Cole. I still personally, I for me, the greatest fighter I've ever seen is Jon Jones. That's the guy that I've always thought was the greatest, the most talented guy. I think he did hurt his career by his own virtue, Cole, because I think he did a lot of stuff that, he probably shouldn't have got involved in. But I still think that with the amount of title defenses and championship fights he had, I still think he's number one. And, it's so easy to go back now and look and be like, oh, he beat Shogun, he beat Rampage, beat Machida, and these guys suck. They're old. They're in Bellator now. At the time, they were the best guys in the world. So I feel like it's so unfair to look back at stuff. It's the same argument with Fedor. When Fedor was the number one guy during the 2000s, people in the 2010s started looking back and being like, well, he didn't have any great wins. He wasn't in the UFC. It's so easy to look back at it, Cole, and have revisionist history. I think you have to be in the moment. That's why, I'm looking at the fights that guys have won. It's like, when were the guys they fought ranked? What were they ranked when they fought? It's not what are they ranked now. It's what were they ranked when they fought. So that's just my opinion. We could talk about the Khabib GOAT argument for a long time, but I do find it a little bit interesting that Dana White, Sean Shelby, the guy who never tweets, Cole, goes on Twitter and says this guy's the greatest GOAT. Like, it's kind of interesting, right? It's like they really want to promote him as the GOAT now. They don't want to promote Jon Jones as the GOAT now. It's very interesting. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Like, do you think it's a tactic to get Jon Jones to get that heavyweight contract? Do you think that has anything to do with it? What do you think?
I think it's more just that he was retiring and they were just kind of paying his respects. I think if Jones retired, they would have probably sent those same messages, but I don't really put much into it.
Yeah, and there's a comment from Kanshiro. Good morning, Kanshiro. Khabib defeats definitely lightweight GOAT. Jones stand higher chance of being all-time GOAT if he can beat the heavyweight champ, defend it. And here's the other thing I want to say, Cole, about this. To me, I think fighting in multiple weight classes is also extremely important. That's why I would put GSP right at the top, because he fought and won at middleweight and at welterweight, right? That's the same with guys like Randy Couture. Even Demetrius Johnson fought at two weight classes. I'd love to see Jones have some success at heavyweight. But, Khabib, he did have a few fights at welterweight, really early in his career. By the way, some of those guys he beat, Cole, in the first 16 fights he had weren't even, like, they don't even have fights. Like, they had no fights, and he was beating guys a couple times in one night. So, yes, he's 29-0, Cole, but some of those guys, like, some of those wins aren't that impressive. And you look at Jon Jones, I think he only had a few fights before he came to the UFC, right? And then he's been fighting he fought Stephan Bonner his second fight in the UFC. So, to me, I just feel like his level of competition is so much harder, but it's neither here nor there. Now, the question is, the title's going to be vacated. If you had to choose what's next, what would you do a fight between maybe McGregor and Poirier, or would you do a tournament, which Michael Chandler suggested? What would you do to figure out the lightweight championship at this point?
I don't think the UFC would do a tournament. I'd like to see a tournament, but the UFC, I can't see them being interested. I think the UFC is going to do Conor Poirier too. It's better for business if Conor's fighting for Bellator, the champion. I don't see them, if the belt's vacant, I can't see them, McGregor not being part, at least one half of it. It might not be Poirier. Maybe they switch out Poirier and do someone else, but I think it's going to be pretty hard for the UFC not to have McGregor in that vacant lightweight title fight.
Yeah, and talking to you, Cole, like, I think you're convinced at this point that McGregor's going to be part of it, even though I think a lot of fans don't really like that because he hasn't won a fight at lightweight since when? When was the last time he won a lightweight? Was it Eddie Alvarez? In 2016, so it's been 4 years. Having said that, where is it? There it is. Money talks, baby. Money talks, Cole. We know it. So money talks, and I think you're right. The tournament idea sounds great, but UFC just very reluctant to do it. They did do it a flyweight tournament, but that's flyweight. No one cared about that title anyways. There's too much money to be lost by not doing a lightweight belt. So I do think that's going to happen January 23rd, McGregor Poirier 2 for the UFC lightweight championship. Co-main event should be Ferguson versus Chandler, or Gaethje versus Chandler, someone like that. Put all those guys in the card and figure it out. And also one other guy that we forget about in this division, Cole, but Charles Oliveira, 7 straight wins. He's a guy that's like, I want my shot at the title. But, Cole, the Kevin Lee win was nice. The other wins are not over great at opposition, man. Guys like Clay Guida, Jared Gordon. Yeah, like, where would you put him? I think he's top 10. I don't think he's a top 5 guy right yet.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, but I love watching him fight. Like, I can't blame him for at least saying, hey, I have, he's got, I think he actually has 17 wins in the UFC as well or something, whereas Chandler has 0. And, I love Chandler, and he's very marketable, and the UFC really likes this guy, but he has no wins in the UFC, Cole. I'd really like to see Michael Chandler fight a guy like Dan Hooker, get a win, and get some respect from UFC fans. Because I think at this point, a lot of fans that don't watch Bellator are like, kind of like, where is this guy coming from, and why is he in the title talk so early? Anyways, I think that's it for this one. Let's go down to the next fight, Cole. co-main event. Robert Whittaker defeats Jared Cantor. I believe we both picked Whittaker in this fight. Actually, I completely forgot Cole. I was going to say off the top, congratulations. Cole actually had a perfect night at picks, guys. So wanted to give big ups to Cole there. I got one wrong. It was Gaethje. Cole actually got me. Cole messaged me. He goes like, he's like, comes down to this one, man. I'm like, come on, Cole. Like, I thought I had a chance, Cole. I'll be honest with you, man. That first round, the Gaethje fight, those kicks he was landing, I was like, holy crap, he's going to win this fight. And the range he was keeping, but eventually Khabib got the job done. I'm not surprised. But again, one underdog in this card won. It was Robert Whittaker. Me and you both predicted he'd win. Great fight, Cole. I think it could have been fight of the night, although the Kenny fight was a little bit better in my opinion. But awesome fight. Cantor came back. Cantor broke his arm in the fight during a kick, block kick. So that's obviously an issue. But overall, I think Whittaker looked good. He almost kind of faded in the third round and got caught by Cantor, but ultimately held on for decision. So the question is, does he get Israel Adesanya next? See, I know Dana White said that, but man, hearing what Whittaker said in his comments, he didn't sound excited at all for that fight, Cole. I almost feel like they should wait for the Hermanson and Till fight and just see what happens there. What do you think?
Yeah, because Whittaker said he promised his whole family he's spending the holidays with them, so there's no way he's going to fight in December or even January because he's not going to be training over the holidays. So I think the probably quickest time you're going to see Whittaker is probably March because he'd probably start camp like end of January. So does Izzy want to wait that long? I don't know. So maybe you do. Maybe Izzy moves up to 205. Like, because really, is there much intrigue in an Adesanya-Hermanson fight if Hermanson beats Till?
If he beats him impressively, maybe. But the thing is, like, Izzy, he still hasn't made many title defenses. I think he has 2, right, over Costa Romero. But the thing is, he cleaned out the division going up the ladder. He beat all these contenders going up the ladder, like all these guys. So to me, yeah, I'm interested to see what the next move is. But honestly, Cole, like, I'm not that interested in the rematch with Whittaker. We saw the first fight last year. It wasn't that long ago. I don't see it going differently. And Whittaker didn't sound like he wanted it that bad. So I'd rather see him wait for this fight with Hermanson or, the Blachowicz fight's right there too, Cole. He hasn't had a fight booked either. That'd be a big fight. Wins that belt, fight Jon Jones next. Very, very possible. Take a couple of comments here from Cantor. 8-man lightweight tournament. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. But again, I don't think they'll do it. I do like the idea. Don't get me wrong. But I just don't see the UFC doing it. Although I think that you can easily find 8 lightweights. Like you said, Islam Chandler, you put Hooker in there, maybe Paul Felder as well. So there's lots of guys. He said he had a 1-round pick. He took Struve. Why would you pick Struve? Come on, man. He gets knocked out.
I would like to say we did pick more than one underdog because when we did our show, Tuivasa and Shafkat were underdogs.
No. Yes. Cole's
but then it flipped. But then it flipped. So it looked like we only picked one. But we did take 3.
I mean, only one, right? So we actually got it right, Cole. So it's good. It was a good event for us. I mean, me and Cole, we've had our ups and downs. Our picks are public, so it's not like we're hiding anything. We've had our ups and downs, but this was a great event for both of us. Just going through the rest of the card, Cole, we'll go through it quick. Alexander Volkov gets a win over Walt Harris. Phil Hawes defeats Jacob Malkoun. Lauren Murphy defeats Shakarova. And opening up the card, we had Ankalev defeating Jan Kutalaba. Just any thoughts on those 4 main card fights before we get to the prelims?
I was kind of surprised Volkov put away Harris. I thought it'd be a decision. I didn't like this fight for Walt Harris. I thought the UFC should have gave someone a win. Like, he lost Overeem and then they gave him Volkov. I think it's might even be a tougher test because Overeem, people always worry about his chin. So there was always that chance if Harris could put him out. I just never saw a way for Harris to land on Volkov. Like, Volkov really doesn't get knocked out. Derek Lewis is the exception, and now was like 10 seconds left in the fight. But a good win for Volkov. He's going to step up. Like, I don't really know. What do you think you do with Walt Harris now? Because I think the UFC likes the guy. His story is obviously something like you need to get him a win, but like I don't really know who you give him.
Yeah, it's tough because Walt is such a great guy, right? And the fact he's actually still fighting it, like I'm shocked he didn't just immediately retire after his daughter was murdered. I mean, it's insane what he's still doing, right? But Cole, you got to be objective about it. I talked about this with James yesterday. Like, he's not that great, man. He's a very limited guy. He's got obviously knockout power. If he doesn't win in the first round, Cole, he has a hard time winning because his cardio is not good. Maybe if Struve doesn't retire, you could do the Struve fight, but also like Ben Rothwell is an interesting fight. Just looking at the rankings.
What about a ranked guy and Blago Ivanov, 2-fight losing streak?
Yeah, that's another fight. Or even like if they want to do a kind of layup, give him the Castro because I think he wins that easily, get back in the win column. But I think any of those guys make sense, Cole. I don't want to see him fight a top 10 guy at this point, though. It's got to be someone like maybe in that 10 to 15 range or outside the rankings, because I do think the UFC really likes him and they want to get him back in the win column. Any thoughts on those other fights?
Ankalaev really ended that little rivalry. I just thought he was so much better than Kutalaba. I didn't really understand what was the rush for that rematch. I get it was controversial, but I didn't really see Kutalaba winning that one. Phil Hawes, I don't know why that was on the main card. It was good knockout, but I'm not really too impressed by Malkoun. Like, I don't really put much stock into that win just because it's a guy that's 4-0, hasn't fought in a year, and like he didn't even really look like he wanted to be in there. Like right when Hawes started walking him down, like he just shelled up against the fan. But that was a brutal knockout. Like he landed like 3 after he went out cold.
Yeah, and I just got this question from Marcus. Good morning, Marcus. He says, "Who would you book, Lauren Murphy?" This is a great question. She's looked really good. I think she's won 4 straight fights. Lauren wants more respect. She called out the reporters of Fight Island. She's like, "You guys need to answer me. Why am I higher in the rankings?" And basically, she said she believes she should be next for a title shot. However, she also said that because Andrade knocked out Chikagian, she could get the next shot. I could still lean towards Andrade because I think knocking out the number 1 contender like that, like she did, and the fact she is a former champion at 115 should get her that edge. But you could give it to Murphy. You could give it to Calvillo. I think they'll probably rebook the Calvillo-Murphy fight call. Like, I know she beat Shakurova is impressive, but to me, like, how does that win get you a title shot? Seriously, like, that's an unranked fighter that no one really even heard of before this fight week. So I personally wouldn't give it to her, but she does deserve a little bit more respect. Just going through the prelims really quick, Cole. We'll just talk about them really briefly here. Tai Tuivasa defeats Struve via knockout. I think this is it for Stefan Struve. His team should really talk to him about retiring from the sports. Casey Kenny defeats Nathaniel Wood. Amazing fight. Fight of the night. Great fight. Shavkat Rakhmonov defeats Alex Oliveira. You got to wonder, Oliveira, he's very inconsistent. I don't think he gets cut, but I mean, this guy is definitely on the verge, especially after missing weight. Dan Jung and Sam Alvey, really close fight, ended in a draw. I thought Sam Alvey edged it out, but super close. Miranda Maverick defeats Liliana Jajua. I did talk about this with James yesterday, so I'm not going to bother talking about it with you today, Cole, but I didn't agree with the stoppage. And finally, Joel Alvarez defeats Alexander Yakovlev by armbar. Overall, a fantastic card. You had, I think, 9 finishes, right? So a crazy card, Cole, a lot of finishes, and just an epic night and an epic moment at the end with Khabib retiring. Just your overall thoughts on the card and the prelims as well, because I want to get your thoughts on those.
This is a great card. And 11 a.m. start time. Sign me up for every
it's great.
Saturday.
I love it.
I loved it. Like, card was over at like 5. I had one buddy over to watch it. Like, he's a big UFC fan. We watch most of the cards together. And he's like, "This is sweet. Like, I can go home, have dinner, have my whole night to myself. Like, I can do more of these, or at least like do them earlier. Like, even if the card ends at like 9, like, I'd be fine with that."
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I love it too. Let me grab this comment for Shiro. A lot of people in fantasy leagues for 12 fights pick right, but they bet money to be same payout because 10 times less, you don't put on underdogs for money multiplier win. Yeah, I know what you're saying. He's right. You can stack chalk. It's you might get plus money, but it's when you throw a couple dogs in is when you really make some dough.
Shit ton of.
Yeah, but anyways, this card didn't even matter because there really wasn't much. Anyways, all right. So let's get to the next card here, Cole. We're gonna preview UFC. On ESPN plus 39, aka UFC Vegas 12. It is in Vegas. It's on Saturday at the Apex. Main event, Uriah Hall versus Anderson Silva. So we'll start with the bottom, work our way up, Cole, as always. And right now, actually, give me your thoughts on the card while I tee it up, Cole. Let's pull up best fight. Let's go ahead.
It's like all right card. Obviously, the main event just built around Anderson Silva's final fight. Like some good. I'm really looking forward to the Bryce Mitchell Andre Feely. Like there's some good matchups. Like I like that Hernandez, Gertzmonger, Greg Hardy, Maurice Green. Someone's probably getting knocked out there. Like the prelims obviously aren't name filled. I think the card's more just built on Silva's final fight.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I picked a couple underdogs today, Cole. I'm curious to hear who you pick. I have no idea who you're going to pick, but let's get going. First fight of the night. Bantamweight bout between Miles Johns and Kevin Natty Vidad, and right now the odds have Miles Johns minus 170, Kevin Natty Vidad plus 150. Cole, who's your pick?
I like Miles Johns this fight. I just don't like the odds. I think this should really be like a pick'em fight. So for me, I wouldn't be betting Miles Johns here. I don't love that line. I think the value's on Kevin Natty Vidad, but I know Miles Johns coming off the loss to Mario Batista. I think both us pick Johns were kind of. I was looking back at Mario Batista. I think we both kind of undervalued what he is. Like, if you look, he's only lost to Corey Sandhagen, and that was before we knew how good Sandhagen was. That loss isn't bad at all, but I think the big thing in this fight is how's John's cardio going to hold up. That's been an issue. Like, he kind of slowed down against Bautista. He kind of slowed down that third round against Cole Smith. I talked to him. He said he got in tie. He kind of revamped his whole training, brand new strength and conditioning coaches. He's more focused on the cardio aspect. So I wonder how much that's going to play a factor, but I just think he's a better wrestler. I think he can be able to just grind out Kevin Natty, get a decision win, but I don't like the line because to me, I think this is a pick'em fight.
Yeah, it's a super close fight. I don't understand the line either. To me, it's like essentially a pick'em. So I personally do see value on Kevin Natty Vidad here, actually. And I remember picking him in his last fight against Ryan Kelleher, I would have picked him as a dog there. I've been impressed by this guy, man. LFA fighter, veteran of LFA, and watching his tape, and he's a very impressive guy. He has knockout power. Only lost once in his career. He did get stopped there in LFA, but overall, I mean, the guy's got finishing power. I think this is going to be a nice debut here for him against Miles Johns, a guy who's been a guy who coming out of Contender Series, I was very high on, but man, I think he's been really inconsistent in UFC. The Cole Smith fight against your buddy Cole Smith there, Cole. I think that the fight could go either way, and then the fight with Mario Batista gets finished in the second round. There's just a lot of stuff I haven't liked about him. Again, he doesn't have that wrestling, and he has some good wins, like the Adrian Yanez win, the guy he's fighting in this card later on. We'll talk about him in a second. That's a good win, but overall, Cole, I think he's more consistent. I think that Natty Vidad's more dynamic, more power. I'm going to take the underdog here, Cole. Kevin Natty Vidad, either knockout or decision. That's going to be my pick to start off the night. Next up, we have a women's flyweight bout between Courtney Casey and Priscilla Cachoeira, and right now we have the odds at Courtney Casey minus 230, Cachoeira plus 190. Who's your pick?
And this is it's weird. I was looking at Courtney Casey's record, 9-8. I always thought she had a lot more weight. She's almost a 500 fighter. I think, but I have to go with Courtney Casey just because I don't think Priscilla Cachoeira is good. 3-fight lose streak. I didn't pick her against Shayna Dobson. I know that she was the underdog in that fight, but she did have a tough run. Valentina Shevchenko, Molly McCann, Luana Carolina. That's not a very good loss. So I don't really put much stock in that. Courtney Casey's if you look at her UFC run, she's only fought good girls like Joanne Calderwood, Randa Marcos, Claudia Gadelha, Felice Herrick, Michelle Watterson, Angela Hill, Cynthia Calvillo, Jillian Robertson. It's always been these top girls. So I do think the level of competition is going to play a factor. I do think Casey's a better fighter. Stand-up wrestling, I think she's better everywhere than Priscilla Cachoeira. I don't expect her to finish Cachoeira. If you look at Casey's wins, a lot of them are just by decision. So I think she's going to clearly win probably 2, if not all 3 rounds. It could be a decision win.
Yeah, I think you have to go with Courtney Casey or 2 for sure. I mean, more experience. She's fought better competition. She's beaten better competition, but she's so inconsistent, Cole. It's very hard to trust her with your money, especially as a favorite. I like betting on Courtney Casey as an underdog. Minus 230, Cole. I don't know if I want to lay it here because I do think she wins this fight, but Cachoeira coming off the win over Dobson, it looks a lot better now, right? After Dobson had that win over what's her name? I forgot the girl's name, but the one she just smashed as the big underdog there, Maria Agapova. That's not a bad win now when you look at it, but still, I don't know. I just can't trust her after those first couple fights in the UFC. She took a lot of damage in that Shevchenko fight. I don't think she'll ever be the same. Good for her to snap that losing streak. I'm glad she's still in the UFC. It just shows a lot of perseverance, but I got to quote Courtney Casey. Cole, I think she grinds it out. Cachoeira is very durable, very, very tough. But I will say this, I don't like the line, guys. Courtney Casey's the kind of fighter you play as a dog, not as a big favorite. So my pick's going to be Casey by decision. I don't really think it's worth the bet because the odds are a little bit inflated here, in my opinion. Next up, we have a light heavyweight bout between Dustin Jacoby and Justin Ledet. It's an interesting fight, Cole. Right now, we have Dustin Jacoby minus 310, Justin Ledet plus 255. Who's your pick?
I have to go with Dustin Jacoby, but I wouldn't bet this fight just because I don't think that's very good 3-fight lose streak. But again, the losses aren't bad. Alexander Rakic, Johnny Walker, Alexa Kammer. Ledet's just been a guy the UFC feeds prospects to lately and see if they can get past them. Jacoby is his second stint in the UFC. He's only 32, so I don't know if he's still that prospect light heavyweight, but he's I just expect this fight to be standing, and I think Jacoby's a much better striker, much more technical striker. When he got cut from the UFC the first time, went to Bellator, then he did a lot of kickboxing fights. I can't see Ledet being able to take him down, so I just think it's going to be a stand-up fight with Jacoby just being able to outpoint Ledet. I don't see Jacoby finishing Ledet. Ledet's a durable guy, you had the distance with the Rakic and Kammer. So I think Jacoby's going to edge out a decision here, but I wouldn't bet this fight at all.
Yeah, this one's interesting because I do favor Jacoby, obviously. If his fight stays on the feet, there's no doubt he has a massive edge in the striking. Ledet has looked good at times. He does have a good jab. But, man, he's so inconsistent, and he's not that active either, which is a problem. Jacoby, you saw his last fight against Ty Flores on Contender Series, Cole, the way he was just so aggressive. That should have been a knockout. That guy is just super durable, extremely durable guy who, by the way, was on PEDs for that fight. So that looks even better now, I think, for Jacoby looking back a little bit. But the thing is, Cole, what happens if the fight goes to the ground, Cole? Who wins? Who hits the edge on the ground? Justin Ledet. So it's risky, I think, laying minus 310 on Justin Jacoby here, because if Ledet does implement a grappling-based game plan against the fight to the mat, we've seen Justin Jacoby go to sleep. Guys like Chris Camovi have tapped him out. There's no reason why Justin Ledet couldn't get him down, get a rear naked choke on him. So my pick is going to be Justin Jacoby. I'm kind of with you. I think either a decision or maybe he does get the TKO. But, Cole, you're looking at line value, Ledet plus 255, I'm not taking it, but I think that some people could, because he does have a path to victory here with the ground game. And Ledet by submission, we'll take a look at that. Plus 2,200. Wow. I think that's a really good hedge. And I think that could win. I think it could win, Cole. What do you think of that? Plus 2,200. That's crazy. So, again, my pick's Jacoby, guys, but I think that looking at that prop on Ledet by sub is definitely interesting. That's a crazy line. That is crazy. For a guy who has a clear path to victory, because, again, Jacoby gets to the ground, you look at his career, and he's been submitted before, again, by Chris Camozzi. John Salter submitted him. Lawal ground and pounded him. And his other wins are losses are by decision. But, overall, I do think he probably wins because the striking advantage. But again, Cole, the ground game, it does worry me with him because he's a glorious kickboxer. He's not necessarily an MMA fighter, although I know he obviously trains it. Next up, Cole, we have a welterweight bout between Jason Witt and your other buddy, Cole Williams. Let's see this one here, Cole. Jason Witt, minus 145. Cole Williams, plus 125. Who are you picking here?
I'm going to go with the underdog, Cole Williams. I just not too high on Jason Witt. Jason Witt had a terrible UFC debut. I know there was a lot of things going into it, like had fight moved from the prelims to the main card because of everything, but he got knocked out in 48 seconds. He's returning like 4 months later. Cole Williams, I know he hasn't fought in a year. Submission loss to Claudio Silva. It's only his second career loss, and before that he was on a long winning streak. He didn't really fight high-level competition until the 2 fights before the UFC, so I do worry about it. This is a fight I have no interest in betting at all. These are, to me, 2 low-level welterweights. But I like Cole Williams. I just think he can connect, probably maybe knock out Jason Witt. I just don't really like Witt coming back so soon after getting knocked out.
Yeah, it's tough. Like, we keep saying don't bet on these fights, but like this is like the definition of a pass. 2 guys that aren't that good. I mean, I don't even know why these guys are in the UFC, to be completely honest with you, Cole. Like, I'm pretty sure the loser gets cut. Cole Williams had 1 fight in the UFC. He lost to Claudio Silva, but neck crank last year. Jason Witt had 1 fight against Takashi Sato, got KO'd brutally a couple months ago. Jason Witt is the more experienced guy. He's been around for a lot longer, obviously, but Cole Williams has been around a long time too. Both guys in their mid to late 30s. Cole Williams 36, Witt 33. There are a few advantages for Cole Williams, I think. He's a little bit bigger. He's 6 foot with a 73-inch reach, so 3-inch reach advantage, 2-inch height advantage. That is good. I know Witt trains at I think probably a better gym with James Carson, those guys, but to me, it's literally a coin flip, Cole, because like I don't think anyone has a strong edge here, and I would take the value on Williams, I guess, if I had to. So my pick's gonna be Williams to win probably decision plus 125, Cole, but you can't catch me betting on this fight. No way, guys, no chance. All right, next up we have Sean Strickland against Jack Marshman, and right now we have Sean Strickland minus 220, Jack Marshman plus 260. Who's your pick?
Yeah, this is a really interesting fight. I actually talked to Sean Strickland last night, so it's kind of 2 years away. He had a terrible motorcycle accident. He even thought he might not be able to fight again. But I do like him moving up to middleweight. He was telling me he used to be like 2% body fat fighting at welterweight. So middleweight's going to be a lot better for him. And I think this is a good opponent for his return. Jack Marshman, I think, is just going to want to stay out and trade. I think Sean Strickland is probably the more technical striker. I do think Jack Marshman has the more is the more powerful striker. But Strickland with the extra 15 pounds, I think he can be able to take those punches. And on the ground and wrestling wise, I think Sean Strickland's a much better wrestler, much better ground guy. So I wouldn't be surprised if Marshman starts winning that first round just on the feet and Strickland just switches his game plan, just kind of takes Marshman down and holds him there or even gets a submission. So I like Sean Strickland here. It's a higher line than what I like, so I don't know if I'd want to bet Strickland, but I do think he wins.
I like Sean Strickland a lot in this fight. Obviously, the layoff is super concerning, especially with the motorcycle accident. You never know how guys are going to return from that. But, to me, Jack Marshman's just the kind of guy you fade every fight. Like, this guy's just not a really good fighter at all. I know he has a couple wins in the UFC, but, man, he has not looked good lately. The John Phillips fight he did win was a terrible fight. The other fights he lost. His last real win, because I think the Phillips fight, a lot of people thought Phillips should have won that fight. His last real win was with Ryan James in 2017. Ryan James is not in the UFC anymore. Also beat Magazine, but not in the UFC. So to me, this is a guy who's been beating kind of lower level guys. Sean Strickland, when he was fighting like high level guys every fight. And for a while, Cole, this guy was like a really top prospect. Like, a lot of people thought he was going to be a future title contender, but had a lot of injuries, had some bad losses, and had some setbacks. I still think this guy is going to bounce back here. The layoff bothers me. The injury obviously concerns me, but overall, I think he wins. And, I think he is a guy you could parlay because I just think he wins this fight, Cole. And to me, it's like he wouldn't come back and fight again if he couldn't operate and couldn't walk and couldn't fight, and I think he'll look good in this fight. So my pick Strickland could be a decision. Jack Marshall's pretty tough, but it could be a submission or a TKO on the ground too. I think if Strickland gets the fight to the mat, he probably wins by submission. So that's another prop I'd look at here. We'll take a look at that one. Sean Strickland. Okay, decisions plus 120, inside distance plus 160. So no value there. Maybe wait for that sub. Actually, sorry, another book has the sub prop at plus 600, which I do think probably is the way he wins. You're looking that way too, Cole, by sub?
I don't know, sub or decision probably.
Yeah, so I'm just saying if you wanted some extra betting value there at plus 600, you could take a look at that. But overall, I just think he wins the fight. And I think he's a guy to parlay, perhaps with the guy that's coming up on the main card here in the first fight of the main card. So definitely consider that. All right, next up, bantamweight bout, Adrian Yanez against Victor Rodriguez. Right now we have Yanez is a big favorite here, Cole, minus 330. Rodriguez plus 270. You give the dog a chance here?
No, I am not high on Victor Rodriguez at all. The guy has literally fought cans in Alaska FC. If you fight for Alaska FC, there's a good chance I'm not picking you to win a fight in the UFC.
Except for that one guy. What's his name? The Croatian guy.
Yeah.
Guy.
That guy's a rare exception. But if you look, like, this guy's literally fought no one. His first 3 fights, every single opponent was 0-0. Then he lost to a guy that was 2-0. Lost to a guy that was 8-5. And then he fought 0-3, 1-1, 2-1, 8-1. The 8-1 win, I guess, is good. But I know you brought this up. But he fought for a promotion called Blood, Sweat, and Beers. If you fight for a promotion like that, I don't really know what's going on, what kind of matchmaking is going on there. But Adrian Yanez to me is a legit prospect. It's only 3 losses. Miles Johns by split, Domingo Pilarde by split, and Levi Moles. None of those losses, all those losses are good losses. Like, those are UFC caliber guys. Coming off a big knockout over Brady Wong, and the contender series look really good. I expect Yanez to get Rodriguez out there pretty early, first, second round knockout.
Now, what's the guy's name? It's like Milos Uric or something?
Yeah.
Something like that. I can't remember his name exactly, but yeah, he fought a few months ago in contender series. It looked amazing. Yeah, I mean, Yanez should win this fight. Again, you look at his record, it's more impressive. Fought better competition, Cole, coming off a great win in contender series, 4 straight wins. He does have a couple losses that I think he'd like to have back against guys like Johns and Pilarte. Those are guys treading water in the UFC, but ultimately, I think he's probably a better fighter than them. The 4-fight win streak also is nice. This Rodriguez guy, again, Cole, anytime you're fighting for a promotion called Blood, Sweat, and Beers or Metal and Mayhem or Solid as a Rock, I'm pretty sure you're fighting like no one. And you look at his level of competition is really bad. So, yeah, I mean, who knows? Like, maybe this guy comes in here and knocks Yanez out and he looks incredible. I doubt it, though. I like Yanez a lot in this fight, Cole. I think he dominates the fight. I think he gets the knockout. So my pick's Yanez by knockout. And the odds on that, let's see if those are out. Yanez by TKO, plus 140. So no value there really at all, actually. So maybe you parlay. You could parlay Yanez. I think he wins this fight, Cole. Pretty sure he wins. Next up, you have Alexander Hernandez, who I know you spoke to, Cole, against Chris Grutzmacher. And right now we have Hernandez is a big favorite, minus 350. Wow, it's a big favorite. Grutzmacher plus 290. You give the dog here a chance.
I like Alexander Hernandez. Yeah, I think this is the kind of layup fight for Hernandez to get a win. The UFC, I think, really likes this guy. He obviously can promote a fight really well. We saw with the Cerrone one. We saw him just, even still, he's a good talker. And Chris Grutzmacher, like, it's hard. The guys have fought since UFC 223 when he beat Joe Lazone. Before that, lost to Davey Ramos, Chaz Skelly. Like, it's hard to know what he's going to look like 2 years off, and he's getting up there in age. Like, he's 34 years old. I do like Hernandez. I think Hernandez is better on the feet. I think he's better on the ground. That's something that I talked to Hernandez about is he hasn't showed his ground game in the UFC. He's a guy that grew up wrestling jiu-jitsu, like striking something he learned afterwards when he started fighting. So I do think if he can take his fight down to the ground, I think that's where he has a clear advantage. Grutzmacher has been a guy that gets submitted before. So I actually think Hernandez by submission, which I'm just looking at now, is
that's interesting.
Do they have it up? Hernandez by submission. Plus 300. Yeah, plus 300. So it's not bad because I do think he even told me that if Mark Montoya told him if the takedown's there against this guy, go get it because they know he has a massive ground advantage. So I don't think Hernandez wins this fight. I do think he wins inside the distance, whether it's by sub or by knockout or TKO. I do think Hernandez gets the job done though.
You talk about bad MMA promotions, Cole. Look at Hernandez, who he fought for. How about Kick-Ass Productions, Texas Pride? So those are some bad ones. And it's going to look at, Chris Grutzmacher. He's a long-time veteran. Good cards like Strikeforce and events like that. All right, so my thoughts on this fight are interesting. I do agree that Hernandez should be favored, but minus 350, really? Why? I mean, I don't get it. You know, I know he's younger, obviously, and he's the more talented guy, no doubt about it. But this is a guy who's pretty inconsistent, Cole. The Dober fight got brutally knocked out. Cerrone got brutal. That looks really bad, by the way. That was only last year, too. That was last year. Can you believe that? Can you believe that, Cole? I was looking at the rankings today, and I'm like, why is Cerrone ranked number 15? And I looked back at his record. He beat Iaquinta and Hernandez last year.
I picked him both those fights, too.
That's crazy. But it's just not.
And then I thought I was riding high on Cerrone, so I picked him to beat Ferguson, and we saw that game high down.
Good call there, Cole. Anyways, as far as Hernandez, I mean, you look at that other fight with Ronaldo, that was a horrible fight, and I think a lot of people thought he lost that fight. So, to me, this is a guy who's really struggled. He's definitely a talented guy. Again, he should win this fight. I hate the odds, though. I wouldn't bet on Hernandez. This is a pass for me. I'd rather bet on guys like Yanez on this card at the same price, or Strickland. I would just completely pass to Hernandez. I think Grutzbacher has a chance to win this fight because you look at again, stats aren't everything, but the amount, like his significant strikes landed is like over 7 a minute. So this guy has a high striking volume, but again, he was beating him on guys like Joe Lozon, not that impressive. And also he hasn't fought in over 2 Cole. The last time he fought was the card that McGregor threw the dolly at the bus. That was 2.5 years ago. So he hasn't fought forever. I can't take him because of the layoff, but I just don't like the odds of Hernandez. My pick's Hernandez. I think Cole's really got a good thing going here with the submission prop. I think that's got a really good chance to win because you look at his 2 losses in the UFC, both by submission. If not, maybe a decision. Hernandez just kind of plays it safe maybe or something and rides it out. But I think he wins. I don't like the odds, Cole. So my pick is going to be Hernandez. But, Grutzbacher, I think people will probably throw a few bucks on him because the odds are so high. But, I don't know. I would rather pick on put some money on a few other dogs in the card that's coming up a little bit later personally. All right, Cole. Next up, Bobby Green against Thiago Moises. This is the fight I talked about a little bit earlier in the main card that I really like. One side in. Right now, Bobby Green minus 280, Moises plus 240. Who's your pick?
Yeah, this is really interesting. Bobby Green, like in 2019, everyone thought, man, like, is he done in the UFC? 2 losses to Card close, Francis Ronaldo, and then he's turned it around in 2020. Wins over Guida, Veneta, and Alan Patrick. To me, I think this is Bobby Green all day. Thiago Moises, I know people are going to be like, oh, he beat Michael Johnson by submission. He was getting absolutely beat up by Michael Johnson. Like, that was a 10-8 round. People were saying you could have, like, it was close being stopped. So, his only way to victory is probably another, like, ankle lock like this. It's just some weird go for his ankle early on in the fight. But I just think Bobby Green's a lot smarter fighter than Michael Johnson. That's the big thing is I think his fight IQ is a lot better than Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson makes a lot of mistakes like that. So yeah. I think Bobby Green's going to be a lot smarter. He can keep it standing and just pick apart Thiago Moises. I don't see him finishing Thiago Moises. Like, you just see Bobby Green. A lot of his fights, he just grinds out decisions. I think that's going to be a similar thing. He's just going to be on the feet, picking apart Moises for 3 rounds and win a decision. And
there's no value in that prop, unfortunately, because it's minus 145. So the odds makers feel like that's going to happen, and I think so too. That's my pick, Green by decision. But I like him for a parlay, Cole. Yep. And, I put a few guys together here. Bobby Green with Strickland or Yanez is like around minus 130. But if you add all 3 together, it's plus 130. And I do believe all 3 of those guys win. If you want to take out Strickland and just do Yanez and Green, you could do that as well. If you're worried about the layoff for Strickland, you could do Yanez and Green, Cole. And that's about a pick and price, about minus 130. So that's, I think, a decent bet. What do you think of that one?
Yeah, I like it. I think all 3 of those guys should win.
Yeah, I think so too. But again, if you are worried about the layoff for Strickland, which I think is something I'll think about a little bit more during the week, you could just do that 2-teamer instead, but you have to lay a little bit of juice. Either way, I think Bobby Green wins, Cole. I think he should be minus 400 here, Cole. I'll be honest with you. I think there is value minus 280. Thiago Moises just isn't that great in my opinion. And you look at the last fight, Cole, he didn't land one strike. He just got the lucky ankle lock. I mean, he got the job done. Michael Johnson, 9 submission losses. This is a much tougher fight against Bobby Green, a guy with good takedown defense and some of the best boxing in the division. I love Bobby Green in the spot, Cole. And if he wins this fight, Cole, he'll be 4-0 during the pandemic. That's pretty crazy. So if he wins this fight, I think he gets a top 15 opponent. Next up, we have a heavyweight bout, Greg Hardy against Maurice Green. It is a very interesting fight. Greg Hardy, wow, big favorite here, minus 310. Maurice Green, plus 255. You taking the crochet boss here, Cole, or you're going to go with Greg Hardy?
I like Greg Hardy in this fight. This is another guy I'd parlay with Bobby Green or Yanez. I think Greg Hardy wins this fight. I think he wins by knockout. I think this is Maurice Green. I think is the guy the UFC had some hype behind. They liked him, and then he lost to Pavlovich in the first round, submitted against Oleinik where he gassed out. And then even his last one did not look good against John Vellante. So I think the UFC's kind of giving him up as a prospect, as someone to build up. And I think this is a fight where they've seen him get knocked out early. Greg Hardy hasn't had a finish in quite some time. I think they want to see him get another finish. So I wouldn't be surprised if Hardy finishes Maurice Green early or even late, because I do worry about Maurice Green's cardio. I think that's a big knock on him. And we've seen Greg Hardy go 3 rounds. So I think even if he doesn't knock out Green early, I still think he can knock him out late. But I like Greg Hardy to win this fight.
Yeah, so I did James's show yesterday, Cole, and this was one of the fights where I just didn't give a pick because I really had to look at it a little bit more because, honestly, I was feeling Maurice Green going into that show with James, and then James had a really convincing argument to Greg Hardy. Basically, my argument was Green is huge, so, he's got a chance to win, but Greg Hardy's also a big dude. Maurice Green is a guy who he kind of fights scared sometimes, Cole, and it bothers me. The fight with Pavlovich, he backs up, gets finished. The Olynyk fight gets backed against the fence, gets taken down. Like, this just bothers me. And the John Vellante fight, he looked terrible, Cole, and somehow won that fight. I don't know how he won. He is a guy that has multiple paths to victory because he can knock you out or submit you. So that's interesting as a heavyweight. He's a big dude, 6'7", 82-inch reach, but there's just too many flaws in his game, Cole. He gets finished too much for my liking as well. Greg Hardy, he's got flaws in his game, no doubt about it. We saw that against Volkov, got kind of exposed, but I think that's a good learning experience. And, Volkov's a great fighter. So even the fact he went the distance actually looks pretty good now. You got to keep in mind, Greg Hardy's only been fighting the UFC. Actually, you talk about who's been fighting the UFC for not that long, Greg Hardy. And this is already his 7th fight in 2 years. So like the guy or hate him, and I think most people don't like him, you got to respect the work he's putting in. And he's grinding, and he's actually in the UFC, and he's fighting hard fights. So, my pick's going to be Greg Hardy, Cole. I think he probably gets the knockout here, but I don't like the odds really that much. It's a heavyweight fight, and I think it's dog or pass personally based on the odds, but I do think he wins. I want to get this comment because this is a really good comment from one of my favorite guys here, Straight Wager. Tread carefully with Strickland. As we know, he's had an accident. His leg still isn't 100%. He's also up in weight fighting a syndicate. Now, he doesn't really have any big men there at all. I think you made some really good points there, Straight Wager. After I said it, I was like, man, like the 2-year layoff, like it's interesting. So, again, I'm like, if you're talking about a parlay, I'm more confident in Green and Yanez than Strickland. But Strickland, it's a guy I'm still confident in him. But you're right, there's always risk. Although there's risk in every fight, there's no doubt about it. There's a risk in every fight. All right, next up, Cole. Backman Muradov against Kevin Holland. This is a really good fight, one of the better fights in the card. I think this will be my sleeper pick for fight of the night, Cole. And right now we have Holland -150, Muradov +130. Who's your pick?
I like Kevin Holland here. I just think it's going to be a striking match. I think he's that better striker. And I think if it comes down to it, I think he's a better grappler too if he needs to start scoring some points, get his fight down to the ground. Muradov, he's impressed me. I wasn't too high on him coming in the UFC. I didn't know how good he would be. But and even his win still, maybe I'm still not high on him. But Trevor Smith knockout okay. And Chichirico by decision. I still don't think I know enough about him in the UFC to really know how good he is if he gets tested against a tough guy. Kevin Holland says, I think this is that perfect test to really see where both guys are. We've seen Holland. He lost to Brendan Allen in the UFC, got submitted. He even won the first round of that fight. But I think this is a test to see who's that fighter that should get that ranked guy next or a big step up. Holland's a ton of fanfare, quick knockout over Anthony Hernandez, that highly real knockout over Joaquin Buckley. Win over Darren Stewart, but Darren Stewart's a guy that makes a lot of fights tough just with his grappling and stuff. But I do like Kevin Holland to win this fight. I think he can be able to grind a decision using his grappling and just kind of picking apart on the feet. But this is a really close fight.
Yeah, you talk about guys that are like really taking advantage of being active lately. Kevin Holland's right there with Bobby Green and a couple other guys like Hughes with Salal and a few other dudes. But this is his 4th fight since the pandemic started. He's won all 3 of his fights. So he's been incredibly impressive. I'm a huge fan of Kevin Holland. I think he's one of the best fighters in this division. He's extremely well-rounded, great striking. We saw that in the Buckley knockout. Like, everyone's talking about Buckley. Are we forgetting what Kevin Holland did to him with that brutal knockout where his mouthpiece went flying? Like, it was nasty. So he's a nasty guy, man. He's a really good fighter, and I love the way he fights. I love the way he talks crap in the cage to his opponents. It's great. So he's a really just a really interesting fighter. But Muradov's very interesting too to me, Cole. He's 24-6. He's the only guy Floyd Mayweather has under contract in the UFC, which I find really interesting. Like, Floyd obviously sees something with this guy that he's signed to a deal with his stable. So he's a money team guy, Cole. And I think that, 13-fight win streak here, he's looked incredible in the UFC. I know Kevin Holland's a great fighter. I don't like betting against him, but, he has lost a few fights in the UFC, and I think this could be one where he loses too. So I'm actually going to go with the dog here, Cole. I'm going to take Muradov. I like the momentum. I like the win streak. I like how he's looked. So my pick's going to be Muradov. I think he's just going to edge it out over Kevin Holland. It's going to be a super close fight. He wins the decision here. But, for me, no bet on this fight. I'm a big fan of both guys, and I think they both have a path to victory here. But I slightly lean towards Muradov just because 13-fight win streak, it's very hard to bet against that, in my opinion. Next up, we have Bryce Mitchell against Andre Fili. You talk about 13th win streak. He's got one too. Right now, we have Bryce Mitchell minus 145, Fili plus 125. I said the last fight was a sleeper for fight of the night, Cole. I think this is another potential sleeper for fight of the night. Who's your pick?
I actually like the underdog Andre Fili here. I just think this is too big of a step up for Bryce Mitchell. Like, if you look at Bryce Mitchell's UFC run, everyone, Tyler Diamond, Bobby Moffett, Matt Sales, Charles Rosa, I don't really put much stock into any of those wins. I don't really think any of them. Charles Rosa is all right. He says because he dominated him, but Matt Sales, Bobby Moffett, I don't even think Diamond and Moffett are in the UFC. I don't even know if Matt Sales is. He might have been cut too. So, and we've seen him lose before. Like, he got submitted by Brad Katona on Tough, but I think this fight really comes down to, I don't think Mitchell can take Fili down. Like, I was looking at their stats. Andre Fili has a 70% takedown defense, and Bryce Mitchell has a 41% takedown accuracy. For someone that's whole game plan is get it down to the ground, he doesn't really get fights down to the ground. And 41% take against guys like Diamond, Moffett, Sales, and Rosa. And I think Fili's takedown defense is a lot better than all those guys. So I think Fili can keep the standing and he has a 4-inch reach. I just think on the feet, he's a much better striker. I just think he just pop that jab, not let Mitchell get it tight, just edge out a decision. I don't see either guy being able to finish him. I do think the Mitchell has to finish Andre Fili because I don't think he can continuously just grind out what he did to Charles Rosa. So I like Fili to keep this standing, just use his jab and just piece up Mitchell to get a decision.
Yeah. I'm actually in agreement with you on this one too, Cole. It's our second consensus dog. The Cole Williams one, that's kind of a fight that's a really real pick 'em. That's a shot in the dark. I think this one, if we're going to make a consensus dog, I'd rather go with Andre Fili here, Cole, because he's a lot more experienced in the UFC. So, it's still a dangerous fight for him, obviously, because Bryce Mitchell's super crafty in the ground. We saw that in the Rosa fight. We saw that last year when he got the twister. He's been impressive, obviously, but people forget, Cole. Yes, he's undefeated as a pro, but he also lost to Brad Katona on top of a guy who's no longer in the UFC, and that loss, he did show some holes in his game. I think he's improved that since then. But Andre Fili, he has a very crafty ground game as well. His striking is way better though. So to me, if he keeps the fight standing, he wins. But Fili has been mixing in a lot of grappling fights lately. The Jordan fight landed 5 takedowns in that fight, so maybe he'll want to kind of show Mitchell, hey, I can hang with you on the ground. And this is what James was mentioning yesterday. It's something that it's in the back of my mind now that, maybe he'll try to be like, hey, I can match you on the mat when he should stay in the feet and win that way. But overall, I do favor Fili. I think I should mention this. The odds opened at minus 110 each, Cole, and the line now has been driven to Mitchell as a favorite. I believe I would personally favor Fili a little bit, like probably the same way, minus 130, minus 140. So it's a slight lean towards Fili. I think he gets the job done, but it is a competitive fight, no doubt about it. My pick would be Fili probably to win the decision. Here's a comment from Kenshiro. Fili hasn't looked good in his last 2 fights. I think Bryce will pretzel whack Fili with mustard to see himself in the finisher. That's what my dad calls submissions, man. He calls them pretzel holds. You're like my dad, dude. All right, main event of the evening, Cole. Uriah Hall against Anderson Silva. Main event of the evening. 5-round fight, guys. According to Anderson Silva, according to Dana White, it's going to be the final fight of his career. Having said that, it's going to surprise anyone if he ends up in Bellator like next year, Cole. It won't surprise me. I'll tell you that right now, man. It will not surprise me.
Did you hear in the promo? He said, this is my last UFC fight. He did not say this is my last fight.
Oh, I know. And, Dana White keeps saying, okay, it's his last fight. He's the oldest fighter in the UFC. We have to mention that. 45 years old. Like, there haven't been many guys that have been older to fight. I think maybe Randy was a little bit older. Maybe he might have been 45 or 46. And some guys, obviously, in the early UFC days were like in their 50s too. But not lately. It's very rare to see guys in their late 40s fighting. I guess Dan Henderson would be the best example. So Anderson obviously is a legend. I love the guy. I hope this is it for him because Cole, honestly, especially if he gets KO'd here, I do not want to go see him go to Bellator. Although having said that, Cole, there are some fights where I'm in Bellator that could be interesting at 205 and at middleweight. Either way, let's talk about this fight here. Uriah Hall, minus 225 right now. Anderson Silva plus 185. Cole, who's your pick?
I have to go with Uriah Hall. I don't think this fight is going to be exciting. I just think both of them are going to show way too much respect for their striking. I don't really see. I even wrote this in my preview, and I'm like, I don't really want to write this, but I don't. I just expect this to be a 5-round decision with not much going on. I just think Uriah Hall is going to show way too much respect for Anderson Silva as a fighter and as a striking, especially due to his retirement fight. I think Silva has just kind of lost a step where I don't even think he can really be as fast and quick and can move in and out and pick a piece up Hall. So I just think Hall is going to be a much faster striker, probably a more powerful striker. I just don't see it. I don't see him finishing Anderson Silva unless his leg gives out again. Because really, Silva hasn't been like brutally knocked out unless Chris Weidman because a lot of his TKO losses are just because of that leg. So I do think if Hall does leg kicks, maybe that leg gives out again, similar to Cantor. But I just think Hall's gonna be way too respectful and I just think he's gonna be able to grind out or just get a decision win. But I don't really expect much out of this fight.
Yeah, the more I'm thinking about it, I really like straight wager when you said maybe about Strickland, kind of lay off him. And, looking at another alternate parlay here, guys, Bobby Green and Uriah Hall is minus 104. I think that wins. I really like Uriah Hall in this fight as well. Cole, I got to be honest with you, man. I almost wonder if you got into the MMA oddsbreaker backend and read my article it's going to come out tomorrow, because I pretty much wrote exactly what you just said. I wrote exactly what you just said, Cole. I said, show too much respect. It's going to go to decision. Anderson's reflexes aren't there. His speed's not there. Hall's just going to pick him part one decision. I literally had the same breakdown. So my mind is feeling the same way as you, Cole. I like him a lot here. You cannot bet on Anderson Silva in this fight. 45 years old, coming off a bunch of losses. No way. Uriah Hall should win. Having said that, Cole, he's so inconsistent too. So I can see why people want to lay off and just watch it. But it's more of a fade on Anderson at this point in his career. So my pick is going to be Uriah Hall to win the decision, which is like plus 175. I'd rather just parlay him, because he could get the knockout easily or kick Anderson in the leg and break it, Cole, again. Sure. Father's plans where I think my dads are mentioned. Khabib humble, great champion, came down Mountain Village, beat the world's best, still left humble in the village, but on top. Yeah, I heard Ariel actually. I was telling you, Ariel was on Fan 590 here yesterday, and he was talking about Khabib and basically said, this guy is he's rich, Cole. He's super rich. Like he makes probably 10 to 20 million a fight, if not more. And also his speaking engagements. Ali Abdelaziz is saying he gets like a couple $100,000 every time he speaks. So he's extremely wealthy, but he's so close to his family. He still lives with his mother and father, or he did live with his father. He lives with his mother in a big house in Dagestan. So he's a very close guy to his family. And 100% with you, Kanshiro. And if that's his reason for retiring, that's a great reason. I mean, that is one of the best reasons we've ever seen. So the guy is just an absolute legend. You got to love Khabib, man. All right, Cole. We have about 8 minutes left, so we have a few things to talk about as far as news and some finances. We'll go through it quick. First thing I want to mention, Robbie Lawler versus Mike Perry has been scratched from UFC 255 in the wake of the allegations against Mike Perry. Dana White was asked about this at the press conference and basically said no comment. He just said, the courts are deciding this, and I heard that she didn't get a restraining order, and it was it wasn't the greatest answer from Dana, I'll be honest. And the next day we saw the fight taken off the card. Do you think it's the right move by the UFC?
I think it is for sure. I don't think you can really have him fighting, especially what's going on. Let it play out in court, and especially because a lot of people are already not happy with him returning so soon after what happened in that bar. So I just think this added to it where I think this is the right decision to not have Mike Perry fight at all.
Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer when you think about it. It's crazy because that bar fight was in the summer, and the UFC's like, hey, we're going to suspend him temporarily while he gets help. It's like 2 months later he was booked for a fight, so it's kind of weird. It's probably the right move. I hope they keep Robbie Lawler in the card. Hopefully that Jeff Neal fight can happen. That'd be a great fight, but I guess we'll see what happens. And here's another piece of news here, Cole. Stipe Miocic, Francis Ngannou 2 being targeted for March 2021. So a lot of people wondering why it's so late. But here's the thing. These cards are booked, guys. So we have November booked. We have December booked. January is Conor and Poirier for that pay-per-view. February is probably going to be Usman and Burns, if I had to guess. And then March will be Stipe and Ngannou. So, yes, it's a while away, but there's a reason for that. It's because the UFC's cards and their pay-per-views are booked, unless they double stack card. But the other thing is you still have Adesanya who needs to fight. And he probably wants to fight again soon too, and also Jon Jones. So they have a good problem on their hands right now, Cole. They have so many guys coming back, and they don't have enough cards to fill. So I mean, it's obviously March is a while away, but I can understand. So what are your thoughts on this trilogy fight? Or sorry, not trilogy, rematch?
I honestly, this is so hard to call because we really haven't seen Ngannou's takedown defense since then. He's just been knocking everyone out with literally one punch. Since that fight, it was literally just been knocking everyone out in the first round. So the questions that were there after the Stipe Miocic fight are still there in my mind. Can he stuff the takedowns? We saw Stipe be able to take the punches the first time and just out-wrestle him. Can that happen again? Absolutely. Could I see Ngannou going in there and knocking out Miocic in the first round? Absolutely. It's so tough to call. Because we haven't seen. That's the thing. I wish Ngannou wasn't knocking all these guys out so early, so we could see his takedown defense now.
Yeah, and the other thing is the line. I was looking at the line. Minus 190 Francis, plus 165 Stipe. What the hell? I don't get that at all. I know Francis is obviously a beast. We all know that, but that line should be flipped, Cole. Stipe should be favored in this fight. So right now, I'm 100% playing Stipe plus 165. I'll tell you that right now, Cole. I mean, that's a no-brainer. He should be the favorite, so I'll take the dog money. But again, I don't bet on futures until the fight week because you never know, man. Fights get canceled. I don't want my money tied up in future fights that might not happen. So hopefully this fight happens. And we have a really good comment here from Marcus. Do you see Stipe and Francis as coaches for next up, which is supposed to start filming next week? Actually, this week, right? Cool. Next week. Now that they're back in Vegas. It's possible, I guess. I still think it's going to be Colby and Masvidal local. That's my pick. What do you think, man?
What was it? Sorry.
For top coaches, who's your pick?
Don't,
because I think it's going to be Masvidal and Colby Covington. That's what I think.
That's what I think too. But you think they would have said something, especially because they were saying they're filming the week after they get back from Fight Island, which is this week.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? I don't know when it's supposed to start. I'm guessing January, if I had to guess. And the show's usually like 3 to 4 months. So I don't know if March even matches up. But it's definitely interesting, Marcus. There's definitely a chance. I don't know. We don't know much about Tough. We just know it's going to start filming next week. We don't even really know the weight classes or anything like that. Cantor's got a comment. The guy can't stop takedowns, doing the aggressive forward punching brawler, taking down, wrapping up like it's a Khabib blanket. Yeah, we saw what happened in the first fight. Francis had a great first round, then Stipe just went for the takedowns. Let's get a few fight announcements, Cole. We haven't had a chance to talk about this fight. Khamzat Chimaev against Leon Edwards. It's happening, guys. December 19th. So me and Cole were going back and forth. Cole said Leon Edwards should be favored. I said Chimaev. Leon Edwards opened as the favorite. Now Chimaev is a clear favorite, minus 160. So I think we're both kind of right there, Cole. But yeah, right now, minus 160, Chimaev plus 130 for Leon Edwards. And I think that's a little bit interesting, don't you?
Yeah, to me, I think this really is like a pick. This is the definition of a pick-up fight. I can see path figures for both of them. I can see like maybe Chimaev isn't as good as everyone thinks he is. Leon Edwards stuff the takedown, just absolutely the more technical striker, just picks him apart for 5 rounds. Or I could see Chimaev just going in there, absolutely mauling Leon Edwards and doing what he did to everyone else and showing that he's the real deal. So I still have no idea who I'm picking. I think it should be a pick 'em, but I get why Chimaev's favorite just because he has so much backing right now. But this is a big fight for both ends because Leon Edwards, if he wins this, there's no doubt he's getting the next title shot. It's derailing that hype train, already on that winning streak. If Chimaev beats Edwards, I think the UFC's going to give Chimaev the next shot.
Yeah, I think anyone who got the plus 150 at the opener, that's a great bet, especially now that you could bet on Edwards and just basically get free money depending on who wins. So I would have loved him at plus 150. As a favorite, I'm not sure, but we'll see what happens. This line will bounce back and forth. It'll get close. It's a very, very competitive fight. Chase Hooper against Peter Barrett's another fight that you mentioned, Nicole. What do you think of that one?
It's definitely interesting. Chase Hooper needs to win after the last one. Peter Barrett, I'm not too high on, so I'd probably Chase Hooper, but who knows?
Your boy Eryk Anders against Antonio Arroyo.
I like that fight. It's definitely interesting. Eryk Anders is he's someone where like his whole career would have changed. A lot of people thought he beat Lyoto Machida. If he got that decision, his entire career changes, which is kind of weird. Like he's not having to fight all these guys, not having to take that Thiago Santos short notice fight to get more of a name. Like it's so weird, but I like this match for him. It should be a good fight.
And Matt Schnell against Tyson Nam.
I'm definitely interested in that too. Because when I talked to Tyson Am after that, he said he had no interest in that just because they knew about this fight for 8 weeks and Matt Schnell couldn't make weight after 8 weeks. He should move up. So he didn't want to do a whole nother training camp to have Matt Schnell not be able to make weight. So I'm kind of curious why Nam decided to take that fight. He was calling for that top guy. I didn't know if he deserved that top guy, but I was really interested in fight I'm looking forward to though.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I think that's it for today's show, guys. So Cole, actually, I'll take the last comment for Kenshiro. You get the last word, Kenshiro. Leon Edwards will lose due to ring rust and activity. As you said, the active Cody fighters wins and Chimaev is most active. Yeah, I think that's a huge point. Leon Edwards hasn't fought in a year and a half. I think it could come back to haunt him. Cool. Plug your stuff, man.
Twitter, AckelShell91. The show this week is Alexander Hernandez, Maurice Green, James Krause, and Brad Katona, who's back fighting for a EMC, a European promotion, fighting for the belt on Saturday. So we talked about that UFC release, why he signed with just a local promotion at the time, like a Bellator, PFL, and all those stories and fighter picks for Hall Silva, Musasi Lima, and then I also talked to Miles Johns as well.
Oh, busy week, Cole. So good for you, man. Definitely check out Cole's podcast at bjpenn.com. Just Scrap Radio. Subscribe and watch that as well, guys. All right, you guys can follow me on Twitter at MMAOB. This podcast, as always, available at MMAOddsbreaker.com. It's on our YouTube channel, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts. Anywhere you get your podcasts, it's there. We're trying to grow the numbers. I know that there's a lot of podcasts out there, guys, but I do think we put on a consistent, good show every week. So please, tell your friends about it. You guys can follow me on Twitter, also at bjpenn.com. and MMA Ratings on that. I actually have an article there of Khabib and his retirement, so check that out. And I got a few irons in the fire right now with some other places, so I'll let you guys know. Hopefully in the next week I can make some announcements there, but some good things coming up. So Cole, once again, man, thanks for joining me, and everyone, thanks for tuning in. Have a great day, guys. Bye.